What's the biggest reason the Utah football team has fallen short of expectations so far in 2024? We're breaking down why, and we're also going to start talking about Utah's matchup this week with Houston on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If it's your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments, as well as on social media. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. You can visit FanDuel.com to get started. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by Utah beat reporter Michelle Bodkin. And Michelle, when you talk about this Utah team, and as I said in the open, we'll get to a preview of Houston football, and also just want to talk about for lack of a better word, the vibes are with this Utah football team right now, as they're going through a lot, obviously. But first, I want to start with, what's the biggest reason this team has fallen short of expectations? And I do believe overall it's been quarterback play / mismanaging the quarterback room heading into this season. This team, the biggest thing obviously holding Utah's back is Cam Rising's injury, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that factors into that, in my opinion, is not having a quarterback strong enough to step up and still keep this team going. If Utah scored over 25 in most of their games this season, they would only have one loss, and that's the Arizona State game. So the offense has taken a step back clearly. I think they averaged 23 a game last year, but there was a lot of talent coming in. We were really excited to see what this team can do. They have asked a lot of Isaac Wilson. I don't think it's always fair the position they've put him in. And over the last few weeks, we've seen he's really not ready to be a backup quarterback who competes for a Big 12 title, which most backup quarterbacks aren't. But I do believe there are other options Utah could have found that keeps them afloat. I mentioned quarterback mismanagement. This also goes back on, hey, we weren't able to find a quality veteran throughout the transfer portal. And obviously Brandon Rose, the plan hasn't gone to fruition as they'd hoped there. I thought he was going to be the guy who would replace Bryson Barnes, and he ends up getting beat out by Wilson. The Sam Heward move was a nice one, but obviously too little too late, as he hasn't been able to acclimate quick enough. So I just do believe the mismanagement of the quarterback room as well as the quarterback play is the biggest reason we've seen this team currently sitting here at 4-3, which is still hard to believe, Michelle.
I mean, the quarterback situation certainly has not helped Utah by any means. I don't know how many teams this honestly would help, though. You think about any quarterback worth their salt that's in the transfer portal, they're not transferring to go and sit behind Cam Rising. And the fact of the matter is Utah tried really, really hard. And I was told made actually some very good offers to very good quarterbacks to come and have the potential to sit behind Cam Rising, maybe be the starter the following season. They didn't want to do that. And I get that. Usually if you jump into the transfer portal, it's because you believe in your heart of hearts that you are good enough to be the guy. You don't want to have to wait another year to be the guy. Even though, there's also high potential that you could end up being the guy anyway. But it's just a gamble that I don't think most of these guys want to take. And so and again, that's not really a Utah problem. That's an everybody problem. Everybody's screaming about we need a good solid backup. We need a good solid backup. Good solid backups are hard to have now with the transfer portal and with NIL. It's just a fact. There just are not going to be a lot of teams, I think, that ultimately at the end of the day are going to be super satisfied with the production they get out of the guy sitting behind their guy. With that said, I do think Utah made some tactical errors as far as making sure that Isaac Wilson or whoever was available could step in and do so with ease. I think, and this is going to kind of play into, what we talk about a little bit later on with Andy Ludwig being stepping down as the OC. But I think, we talk a lot about how complicated and difficult Utah's offensive system has been under Andy Ludwig. And it is the truth. I've talked with a few people that have really backed that up, coincided. it is a difficult system to learn, especially if you are the quarterback. And I think you can go back through and see historical proof of that. The guys that have done well in Andy Ludwig's system are typically guys that have had time to sit in it. We're talking about Brian Johnson in 2008. Tyler Huntley didn't necessarily sit in the system as much, but by that time he had 2 years of playing experience behind him under Troy Taylor when Andy Ludwig took over in 2019. And on top of that, Tyler Huntley, super underrated quality of his is he is incredibly smart, like super smart. So a guy like that, can probably pick up enough in order to get by. And he had a really great season in that system. Then you have Cam Rising that sat in the system really basically for 2 years before he ultimately took it over. And he just had time to really soak and absorb that. Now you have a guy like Isaac Wilson, freshman. He's brand new. He hasn't had time to soak in that. He hasn't had time to learn, all the ins and outs the way that some of the others have, or he just doesn't have the experience and the know-how behind him to maybe make up for that a little bit. And on top of that, it's also a system that I think has kind of been proven time and again. You can't bring in a transfer and expect them to do well with it. You look at guys like Charlie Brewer, that sort of thing, and some of your lower level backup guys like Bryson Barnes, it maybe was just a big ask to have them again come in, step into that. It's a great system if you have guys that know how to run it and are comfortable running it. It's a terrible system if you don't have that, which means anytime you are in a situation where you kind of need a backup, probably not going to be a great way to go. And I think we saw a lot of that. I think that's why, we're seeing the things that we're seeing now. Isaac has a lot to learn. And people need to be patient with him. I don't think it was the right system for him to try and learn quickly in. I think there are other systems that are easier to manage and absorb, especially when you are a young freshman quarterback. I don't think Andy Ludwig knew how to adjust to that very well. The plan was Cam Rising was supposed to be the guy. Well, he's not the guy anymore. So unfortunate, but now you have to, try and adjust to the guy that is your guy, and the system's just not built for that. And so I just think not running something that's a little more user friendly, it maybe has really cost Utah the past couple of years.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think we look at it, there are other transfer portal quarterbacks who are finding success. And that's where, once again, obviously Utah, you made a really good point. Utah wanted to find other ones. That's where it's still on them to find a way and try to land someone. But I do want to give them credit. They at least made the effort. They recognized, hey, it'd be better if we had a veteran. So they tried to, weren't able to. So that's where it is still on them that they couldn't close the deal. But it is very hard to in today's world. And also, if in the past, right, Bryson Barnes probably doesn't leave. A lot of quarterbacks like Bryson Barnes' position in the old days of college football, he would have stayed. And you'd still have a good backup there. I think with the way things played out for exactly the reasons you mentioned, how complicated this offense is to learn, that's where Utah was really hoping that Brandon Rose was going to be the guy to be able to take those reins as someone who has sat and had the opportunity to learn this system. And that's a credit to Isaac for beating him out. And it's unfortunate that Brandon wasn't able to get up to the point yet for whatever reason it may be that he was Cam Rising's backup in waiting to. And it's just the other thing, once again, I want to say is if this is the case that Utah's offense has been in where you need a quarterback to be here for multiple years before he grasps the offense, then I do think you need to make changes because we see teams like Ohio State and Oregon who are not missing a beat right now because they have offenses that Dylan Gabriel and then Will Howard at Ohio State are able to grasp and hit the ground running with quickly. And that is something I think, whether it's Mike Bajakian or whoever this team's new offensive coordinator, I think that's something that Utah should try and make it towards. And if there's anything these last 2 years have taught us, you just can't bank on one guy. And last year, I thought it was kind of the best case scenario when you did, like when you have a backup quarterback, you're going to lose games, obviously. And you look at who Utah lost to, they only lost to good teams. This year, they've lost to solid teams, right? Like Arizona. Yeah. Which one?
What?
Which one were you? Were Oregon State last year? Was that the one you were like?
No. I was just in the, like, this year they haven't lost to the same caliber of team, in my opinion.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and we agree there.
Yeah,
I think that
we
they've
agree.
lost
We
to,
do agree.
yeah, Arizona State and Arizona. I don't think those teams are as good as the losses that this team had last year. So I think that's where it's a disappointment. Obviously, TCU. That's the biggest one where it's like, wow, this team had fallen back a little bit from where the level they were last year, even with a backup quarterback in there. So that's where Utah's in a tough spot, but they still have an opportunity to bounce back and make this a probably not a successful season for what was on the table, but still make it a strong season, get bowl eligible, still got a good opportunity to get up to 8 wins, in my opinion, even though it's going to be very tough and you got to turn some things around quickly. Starts this Saturday against Houston. Want to break down what kind of a challenge Houston will be presenting to Utah in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn Talent Solutions. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role in a given month. Over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. You can hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats that it might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process even easier. They just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process that much quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. And if you want to join that fray, you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's all caps, no spaces. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, turning the page over to this Houston team. And Michelle, we were talking off the air. That's where it is just so wild that this is the position Utah is in, where going into the season, I had this in permanent ink as a win for Utah. And based on how the team has performed as of late, particularly on the offensive side, you can't do that. But this is the worst team they have played thus far on the season. I'm not trying to be mean to Houston. Let's just state the facts. Houston ranks 121st in total offense. I will give their defense credit. 26th in total defense. Good for them. They're averaging just 15 points per game and have turned it over 14 times on the year. And also, this Houston team, another just real indictment against them right now is they've gotten blown out. I define a blowout as if you lose by 20 or more. They have been blown out in 3 of their last 4 games. Now, I will give them credit. They beat TCU. That's their one win. They beat them 30-19. TCU obviously just beat Utah, but that was still deemed an upset. TCU was supposed to win that game. TCU learned their lessons from that loss, used the bye week, and improved in their performance inside Rice-Eccles Stadium. So that's a better TCU team that beat Utah, in my opinion, than the one that lost to Houston. But Utah's still going to have to bring their A game, and obviously they have to correct a lot on offense in a short time with a new coordinator if they want to finally bounce back and get a win.
Absolutely. It's just a tough thing to ask this team, which again sounds so crazy when you look at the talent on the roster, when you consider what the goals were heading into this season. And now you're sitting here going, well, I don't know, what to expect out of this team. And especially since Houston's strength is their defense.
Yeah.
And they're going up against Utah's weakness, which has been a huge weakness this year. And that's their offense. And, again, we're talking about a freshman quarterback, and your OC just stepped down. And I mean, the system is the system, but how quickly do they adjust that, and can they make necessary adjustments to it so it does match where Isaac Wilson currently is, and he can get it and he can grasp it and he can move the ball and push the ball out to the people that we all expected to be playing these big roles. And not to say that they haven't been. Considering the circumstances, Dorian Singer has been very good. Considering the circumstances, a guy like Mekhi Bernard has been very good. Brant Keithy's been very good. Just not good enough. It hasn't been consistent enough. Do you figure out a way to make it consistent enough that the fact that Houston has a good defense doesn't matter? so far we have not seen, in 3 games, we've seen this team not be able to do that. So I'm curious to see what happens. I'm curious to see, this kind of feels like a program, not a program defining, but like just a defining moment in this season, right? You've been hit with losing your starting quarterback for the season in probably the most devastating way possible. I've heard that, that was a really tough blow on the locker room. Those guys love Cam Rising. And to lose a guy like that sucks. And especially in the manner that they lost him, awful. You think that you're going to rally and come together and, get over it. I think for him, and then you lay probably an even bigger egg, in the follow-up week, and it results in your OC stepping down. And now you're looking at 3 losses in a row. This program has not had 3 losses in a row since 2017. I looked it up. And actually the streak was 4 losses in 2017. So it's just kind of one of those things. Are you going to match that for the first time since 2017? I don't know. But I think this team has felt, especially on offense, very lost. I feel like they've been without an identity. And I think they've been struggling really hard to find that. Find whatever it is they need to find within themselves to make this thing go. There's all this other noise, but to me, that seems to be like the biggest issue here, is that there's just a lack of confidence and there's a lack of trust in what's happening, and it's showing on the field. How you get that back, I don't know. Do you get that back in time, for this game with everything that's kind of dogpiled on you in the weeks leading up? I don't know. So it's going to sound kind of corny and cheesy, but they're really going to need to dig deep and find like some of that 2021 magic. You think about what happened with Aaron Lowe heading into a bye week, and like all that came at them so fast, and yet they came out and absolutely smashed USC in the mouth in their stadium. Like, they need like that kind of come to Jesus moment. I don't know if this team can find that, to be perfectly honest. And it breaks my heart to say that. A lot of likable guys, a lot of guys that I really felt like deserved to go out on a better note. But the circumstances just seem to be piling up to where I don't know how salvageable this is. Houston's going to be an interesting game.
That's just, and I agree with everything you said, and it is just crazy that that's what we're talking about. Like I said, the fact that we can't guarantee a win for Utah against Houston, who right now you can argue is maybe the worst Power 4 football program at the moment, which shows you just the position that Utah is in right now. And on offense, it's been really tough. I totally agree with what you said on an identity. I mean, Utah's just been so one-dimensional, and even when they've needed to rely on the run game, it's always someone's missing a block. There was one play where 2 guys ran into each other. Like, that can't happen at this point in the season. It's just the things like that. It's just, it really is hard to fathom some of the penalties and just the things that have gone wrong for this Utah team. It's been tough. And the fact that they've needed everything to break right for them in order to finish a drive is where it leaves you really concerned and wondering if it will all fit together. Because there are a lot, like you mentioned, a lot of great players on this team, a lot of players we really like. There's a reason on paper this team looked fantastic, but games aren't played on paper. And we're seeing the reason for that too. So this game against Houston, though, is going to be really interesting too, because as we said with Houston, I mean, they're struggling. I mean, Donovan Smith, their quarterback's coming off a 3-interception game against Kansas. They really didn't run the ball well, got blown out. No offensive skill position player for Houston is over 250 yards at his individual position. Like, if you do their running back and combine his receiving yards, that gets him over to 300. But like, for example, Mekhi Bernard, one of the top running backs in college football, Dorian Singer, one of the top receivers in the Big 12 yardage wise. So that just shows you where this team is at right now. And even though their defense does some nice things, right? Like Houston's, Jalen Daniels threw for 247 yards, 3 touchdowns, and they also, Kansas ran for over 220 yards. So they're allowing 45 yards on the ground, which is 72nd, while Utah's tied for 43rd at 120 yards on the ground too. So I do still feel like the best matchup in this game, and it proves it statistically, is the Utah defense. And you just got to hope, if you're Utah, that in this short, even though it's a short week, there's enough things that are most of the mistakes that Utah's had, you watch and be like, okay, if these guys are on the same page, if these guys execute a little bit better, like this drive ends in a different result. So that's why it's not like, okay, Utah shouldn't muster any points in this game. But I mean, for the past few weeks, I predicted Utah to put up 30 a lot. And this is the type of game where I'd love for Utah to put up 30. I find it hard to see them doing that. I'm hoping Utah can complete 2 touchdowns. That's what I think Utah needs to win this game. They need to finish 2 drives in the end zone. That's an insanely low bar, but I think the Utah defense is going to step up against a Houston offense that is performing really poorly right now. So I think it's going to take 2 drives from the offense. I think they can do it, but like you said, Michelle, the fact that we can't guarantee it is just extremely concerning and just disappointing.
Well, I think it goes back to, we've been expecting this team to snap out of it for the last 3 weeks. I don't see how, okay, there was an oopsie breakdown. I don't see how this team loses again.
Yeah.
And they keep managing to do it, and it's gone progressively worse too. Like it's not like, okay, shoot, like bad luck. You definitely showed improvement. It looked better, but like this team just happened to be better than you this day. Like, I mean, I'm to a place where I'm just like, okay, you got to show me. You got to show me, because I keep vouching for you, and it keeps looking worse than the last time I vouched for you. So that's just really kind of where I'm at with this team. And I'm not saying this in a mean, like, I'm not mad about it. It is what it is, but like, from a fan perspective, that's kind of what I feel like I have to tell you is I cannot predict what this team is going to do, because I've been proven wrong every single time.
Yeah, hey, you and me both. I'm in the exact same boat. Each week I keep in here and I'm like, oh, they just need to fix this or this will improve like that. And I still feel like you watch the film and it's like, okay, if Utah turns it around this week, like, and once again, turns around as in like gets a couple touchdowns. I'm not expecting turns around as in they finally throw up a 40-point game, but there was a lot of reasons I thought they turned around against TCU and they didn't. So we just can't guarantee anything. And we're just talking about what we see. And that's obvious. And it's not great. You're talking about the Utah offense right now too. So, and there's not a lot going good with Utah since they lost, like we said, 3 games for the first time since 2017 and in danger of matching that 4-game losing streak if they can't get right against Houston. So I think it's fair to ask the question, are the vibes off with this Utah football team? That's what we're going to be breaking down in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com today. We got the World Series getting ready to gear up here, Yankees versus Dodgers. How about college football? The slate continues to deliver week after week, and the NFL season rolls on with even more incredible games. Vikings and Rams getting underway tomorrow night on Thursday Night Football. As for Utah's game, line remains unchanged. Utah 3.5 at Houston. As we've talked about a little bit for the reason, I still like Utah in this game. I just still feel like they're a better program than Houston. Even though neither offense is playing great, Utah's defense is better. And I do believe Utah's defense is going to do enough in this one. But however you're leaning, whether it's for any of the sports we cover, we even got the NHL in Utah now. You can head over to FanDuel for that as well. Head over to FanDuel today, and you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com today. Head over to America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Michelle, you've had the opportunity to talk with some of these players this week. My alarm bells went off when Isaac Wilson mentioned one of the first things the new offensive coordinator, Mike Bajakian, was preaching was the effort. When we're talking about effort this late in the season, that's majorly concerning. So I want to ask, with this team, yes, there's going to be some downers because of just the fact that they're losing right now, but just the state of the locker room. Are the vibes off?
That's a tough question to answer outright. I think it probably depends on who you ask and who you're talking to. I think, honestly, the core group that's kind of been with this team forever, I think their attitude and spirits are better. And I think that makes sense, right? This is something that you've been ride or die with, for 4, 5, 6 years. And you're going to be damned if you let the ship sink, right? Guys that maybe transferred in aren't as invested in this program, came here, for a purpose, are maybe a lot more disappointed. And that's reasonable too. I don't want to say that that's not unreasonable. I think it's very reasonable. You came here for a reason. You came here because you thought this team was capable of doing something, and for whatever reason hasn't worked out. Injuries have been part of that. Been a big part of that. I think overestimating abilities, that sort of thing, has been a bit of a roadblock for this team. And then it's the cycle of losing, right? You start losing and it starts snowballing on you. And the more that you lose, the worse the temperament gets. And again, this isn't pointing fingers or accusing or saying anybody's right or wrong. It's psychological fact. Like, that's just what happens when you're in, I don't want to say not a great environment, but like it snowballs on it snowballs on you. And I'm saying this from personal experience with the Stallions. When I worked for the AAF, we were considered or thought to, on paper, probably be one of the better teams in the league. And we lost quite a few games. And the more that we lost, the more the attitude shifted in the room. Right. And it's as much psychological as it is, physical ability. Do you have the mental fortitude to shake it off and not let, what's going on around you affect how you go about and approach your day, and approach how you go about practice, and approach how you deal with your fellow teammates? It's a very interesting thing to sit and watch. And we'll see. Maybe new leadership in the room is exactly what this group needs in order to kind of come together, reset, and that reminder that effort does matter. That yes, it sucks. We've screwed the pooch a couple of times. We've lost some games that we probably should not have lost in a fashion, no less, that we probably should not have. But this is all fixable if you decide to come together, work together, and put forth a better effort, whatever that means in that room and looks like in that room. And I do have to say, I think Bodkin gives off, a very solid, positive, not like Pollyanna, like rah, go team type of positivity, but just like let's just roll up our sleeves and get to work type of positivity. So, hopefully that just resonates with these guys. Again, we're talking about 18 to 25. Like,
isn't that crazy, by the way? That's what we have to say now in the COVID realm. We do say 25.
You can, that's still at a point where your emotions are all over the place, and you don't necessarily have enough life experience to regulate when things go wrong. Again, saying this from personal experience, at one point in time, I was in that age range too. And I can say for a fact, I probably can roll with things a lot better now than I could when I was 18 through 25. It's the weirdest, damnedest thing, but that's how life works. Right. So I think that's the hope. It's the hope that, just a new voice in the room gets everybody to kind of come together, repurpose together, and maybe you can make something happen.
As someone who is 24, I can guarantee and totally agree with what you were saying about the emotions, because I know I go through them every time when I'm watching this Utah football team right now. I am a glass box of emotions, to quote the great Ron Burgundy. So
I'm 25 plus 10.
Yeah.
So it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. But this Utah team, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the rest of the season. And this going forward now, it's just something we got to look and see. The vibes definitely seem off a little bit, but I do not think this team has given up on the season. And I'm excited to see the effort they come with when they take on Houston. Michelle, if people want to get ready for this game and just read more about what's all going on with this team, where they need to head over to.
Yeah, you guys can check out utezone.com. That's where most of my work is. Sammy Moore does really great work, Dan Sorensen. And then if you want to follow on social media, what's up, what's going on, it's all at Bodkin is a boss. You can find me on X, Threads, and Instagram. And then my Facebook is just Michelle Bodkin. So, yeah.
Thanks for stopping by, Michelle.
No problem.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back tomorrow. Crossover edition. Parker Ainsworth of Locked On Cougars will be breaking down this matchup and continuing to talk about how it'll play out on Saturday. We hope you'll join us then. Have a great day, everyone.